If that was you on the phone and you on the bus, then who was flickering the lights?
Appear to be set at the 3 spot, creating some space between themselves and the Nuggets. As for that play-in tournament field, though, the Lakers are now a game and a half behind the Trailblazers for 6th in the standings, and Portland has the head-to-head tiebreaker after winning on Friday. So let's flip it over and talk about the Western Conference standings with Kirk Goldsberry. And Kirk, LeBron and the Lakers currently finding themselves planted in that play-in tournament.
I don't know if I'm okay. I don't see the light of day. Looking up to higher ground, thinking that'll be your sweet escape. These days gotta schedule the romance. They say that love is a slow dance. A short bike ride to the crib using no hands. Oh, did it feel like I'm floating? But I'm falling with both eyes closed when I let the world spin. Testing the water, she got my nerves tense. Back when I ain't even have a purpose, I was so eager to learn some things. Anxiety bring out the worst in me. Society paint me as enemy. My making it by that remedy. I'm more occasional, don't do it like it.
Hey, it's FYF Sports Menace Lamont. We are back, and we are back today to talk about the NBA play-in tournament. And I know there have been a lot of questions about how the playoff tournament is going to be ran, conducted. We're going to be answering all of those questions. We're going to clear out any myths and all of that misinformation that's been getting circulated. We're going to be giving you guys the facts on how this play-in tournament might work. And we're also going to take a look at the NBA standings today. If the playoff tournament were to start today on May 10th, where would teams fall and what the potential outcomes might be? Now, obviously, when this tournament actually starts next week on the 18th, seeding and positioning may be slightly different, but we just want to kind of give you guys, a quick rundown of what some of the potential matchups might be and how those outcomes may affect the NBA playoffs going into this season. Hey, before we get started with today's video, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you haven't done so already. Again, we're going live on Facebook. Make sure you guys are following us on Facebook, FYF Sports. Very easy to find us. If you can't, the link to that Facebook page is in the description of the video. And make sure you're following us on all social media outlets. That way you can be notified whenever we go live or drop videos like this. But today, we're just going to get right into it. We're not going to waste no time. We really just got to discuss this NBA play-in tournament. Now, the NBA play-in tournament became an even bigger deal after the recent comments by LeBron James, who seemed to be opposed against the play-in tournament. Obviously, now that the Lakers fell from the 4th seed, they're sitting in the 7th spot right now. It's looking like the Los Angeles Lakers are going to be a prime candidate to play in that play-in tournament. And that's not something that we expected going into this season. We expected the Lakers to be 1 or 2 seed. We were hoping that some of the bottom tier teams will have to battle for this out. And we didn't think these play-in games would be as interesting as they are projected to be. We're talking about the Golden State Warriors. You're talking about the Portland Trailblazers, Los Angeles Lakers, all involved in the play-in games, while teams like the Phoenix Suns and the Utah Jazz sit at the top of the Western Conference. And this is going to make for some very, very interesting matchups. If these play-in matchups pan out the way we want them to pan out, it's going to create some very, very interesting first round matchups that I think could potentially boost the ratings for the NBA playoffs sky high. We'll ultimately start seeing the matchups that we want to see early in the playoffs. And the way it could potentially start is going to be crazy. But before we go into those actual teams and potential matchups, I want to give you guys a quick breakdown. And here it is right here of how the seeding system works for the play-in tournament. And as you guys can see right here, obviously we got 2 conferences. There's going to be a total of 6 games across 2 conferences. So 6 games across 2 conferences are going to make up the play-in tournament. And so what we have is we have the 7th seed and the 8th seed. They're essentially playing for the 7th seed. So the winner of the first game, and as you can see right here, the winner of the 7th place game and the 8th place game, they're automatically going to be locked in as the 7th seed. They'll only need to play 1 game. All right. So that's the beauty of it. So there is value. And so there's also value in who they want to play. Now there's risk and there's reward. So if you're looking at that number 2 seed and it's a more favorable matchup, let's say if the Lakers, let's say Utah falls to the 2 seed. I think that's where Utah is now. potentially playing Utah could potentially be a favorable matchup for the Lakers. I think the Lakers could go all out in winning that game to be the 7th seed. That would be a great matchup for them. Now, the good thing about the 7th and 8th place game is even if you lose, you're not completely done already. All right, and that's where we have to discuss the 9 and the 10 seed. So we have the 9 and the 10 seed, and this is going to go the same for both conferences, Eastern Conference, Western Conference. So you have the 9 seed and the 10 seed. The 9 seed and the 10 seed are essentially playing all elimination games. So the winner of the 9 and the 10th place game will move on. They will move on to play the loser of the 7th and 8th place game. So the 9th and 10th place teams, they're playing elimination games right out the gate. Whoever's eliminated is out the playoffs, and that winner moves on into another play-in tournament game. And this marks the third and final game of the play-in tournament for each conference. And so the winner of the 9-10 seed will actually play the loser of the 7-8 seed. All right, and the winner of that final game of each conference is going to be deemed as the 8th seed. And so what I find interesting about these potential matchups right here is you're essentially giving the 7th and 8th place teams jumpstart games into the playoffs. These games, these teams are already going to have their engines revved and running. Whoever lands the 7th and 8th spot, they're going to hit the playoffs. They're going to hit the ground running. So don't be surprised if you see any of these, I would say the 7th or the 8th seed, either win a first round playoff game or win the first couple of games or or be highly competitive regardless of who they play. I expect the 8th and the 7th seed in both conferences to be highly competitive because you're putting these teams into playoff mode a step ahead of everyone else. All right. And so we kind of saw a little bit of this play out last year in the NBA bubble. And it made for some good basketball. They made some slight tweaks to it. I like how they've done it. I think it's going to be good for basketball. And again, here's the key. And I think a lot of people aren't looking at it from this angle. The key is to engaging fans into playoff basketball early. All right, so last year, it kind of got boring. Playoff basketball, and even over the past couple of years, the first round of the playoffs is kind of boring. We already know who's going to win. Second round of the playoffs, all right, it gets a little bit better. Potentially may see some upsets. All right, but it doesn't really start getting interesting in the NBA playoffs until the conference finals and the finals. So I think these play-in tournament games, when you're putting a NCAA tournament type of style game before the playoffs even start, you're engaging your fans early on into the process. So I think it's a smart move by the NBA. I know a lot of players, and especially LeBron James, they're against it. But I think this is something that the NBA needed to do because fans were not tuning in to these early playoff games. And so this makes these games more relevant, and it makes them funner to watch. So now these teams are playing for something. Well, I'm really glad that they didn't turn these play-in tournament games into series, maybe mini-series where you have to win 2 or 3 or 3 or 5. That would have strung it out too long. Single elimination type games. All right, you're giving the 7th and 8th place teams 2 games to lock in a spot, which I think is fair. And I think it's going to make for some really, really good basketball. Now, what we got to get to now is we got to look at each conference. So now we understand the structure of how this tournament is going to be formatted. Now, based on the standings as they are today on May 10th, based on those standings, let's take a look at the Eastern Conference and just kind of see where the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th place teams will fall and how these outcomes might go. Let's go take a look. All right, we got the Eastern Conference right here. Obviously, teams 1 through 6, we don't have to really talk about them right now. I want to focus in on 7 through 10. And in the Eastern Conference, we got the Boston Celtics sitting at the 7th spot, 35-33 record. We got the Charlotte Hornets, 33-35 in the 8th seed. We got the Washington Wizards, 32-36 at the 9th seed. And then we got the Pacers, 31-36 at the 10th spot. Now, there are a few games left in this season. Is there a potential for the Bulls to creep into that 10th spot? Yes, but it's slim to none. With so few remaining games, It would really take a string of bad games for the Pacers to really fall out of that 10 spot, and the Bulls will have to probably win out. And I think the Toronto Raptors I think they have a very, very slim chance of getting in. But the chances of the Toronto Raptors really making it in this year after a really down season is slim to none. So we're going to focus on the 7 to 10 seeded teams in the Eastern Conference as we see them right here. So the first matchup we have will be between the Boston Celtics and the Charlotte Hornets. Now, if you would have asked me before today who would have won this matchup, I would have said the Boston Celtics hands down win this matchup. But when news came out today that Jaylen Brown is going to be out with a season-ending injury, that changed the game. So that takes a primary scorer off the court. Jason Tatum is now the lone primary scorer. You're going to have to ask Kemba Walker to step up and be that scorer, the scorer that Jaylen Brown was. And Evan Fournier is really going to have to step up for the Boston Celtics, all right, as another premier go-to scorer to make up for what they're losing with the Jaylen Brown injury. Now, there is a little bit of a grudge factor here. All right, I want to see Kemba Walker play against the Charlotte Hornets. Remember, this is a team that he stuck around with. He stuck it out with this team for the long haul. He actually wanted to stay, and they said he was asking for too much money. There's going to be a bit of a grudge factor there. He's going to have a lot to prove, but the Charlotte Hornets are no slouches either. With LaMelo Ball back healthy, back in this lineup, all right, I'm not particularly sure if Gordon Hayward's going to be back. That could be a really, really good game to watch. In my prediction, even with the Jaylen Brown injury, I would predict the Boston Celtics to pull that win out. I think the Charlotte Hornets are dealing with too many injuries. I don't think this is a game that they can win without Gordon Hayward on the court. And then also they're dealing with a number of other injuries to their bigs who've been in and out of the lineup as well. Devontae Graham is being now relegated to the bench. Malik Monk is finally back healthy. But again, I think they lack the experience. I think Boston's experience and the players that they have on the court, Tristan Thompson, a lot of playoff experience, they'll be able to help Boston get the job done to win that particular game. Again, that doesn't eliminate the Charlotte Hornets. Remember, that just moves them on to play the winner of the 9 and 10 seed. So we have the Washington Wizards and the Indiana Pacers. The Indiana Pacers right now are just a team, they're just completely reeling. It looks like they're falling apart. You have issues with the coaching staff and players. They're not getting along. TJ Warren refused to come back and play for this new head coach. Victor Oladipo requested a trade. Now he's out of there. Sabonis seems a bit unhappy. Bertazde, the center, is getting into altercations with assistant coaches on the bench. It looks like the Pacers are just falling apart at the wrong time amidst all of the injuries that they're dealing with. And their starting center, Miles Turner, is probably going to be out for this game as well. The Wizards have just been on a roll lately. We know how Russell Westbrook for the month of May, Russell Westbrook's been playing. April, May, Russell Westbrook's been playing crazy basketball. Bradley Beal stepped his game up, even though he's dealing with a hamstring injuries right now. But I think the Washington Wizards should be able to pull this win out against the Indiana Pacers. But we've seen crazier things happen. I expect the matchup between the Boston Celtics and the Washington Wizards. I expect the matchup between the Washington Wizards and the Charlotte Hornets. And obviously, again, I think that's going to be a very high-scoring matchup. But I think Russell Westbrook's a man on a mission. I see Russell Westbrook pulling that win out, getting Washington to the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. So that means we will have Boston at the 7th seed. We will have the Washington Wizards at the 8th seed for the Eastern Conference play-in, as the standings are today. Now, guys, I want you to remember, this is probably not how it probably won't play out like this because the seedings may change. But again, if the playoffs were to start today, these would be my predictions. Let's go on to the Western Conference. In the Western Conference, we have the Los Angeles Lakers, the Golden State Warriors, the Memphis Grizzlies, and the San Antonio Spurs, 7 through 10 seed. All right, remember, we see those teams right there. We have the Lakers and the Warriors, two premier teams over the last 10 years. Never thought that these two teams would be in this particular situation, playing in the play-in game, but here we are today. So obviously, as it stands today, these two teams will have to play each other for the 7th seed. The Lakers and the Golden State Warriors. And then we will have the Memphis Grizzlies and the Spurs in the 9 and 10 game. The Lakers Golden State, man, this will be a tough game. But I would have to go with the Los Angeles Lakers. It seems like LeBron James will be back for this game. Anthony Davis is back. Schroeder's possibly going to be back. They're going to be back, somewhat healthy. While on the flip side of that, the Golden State Warriors, they're dealing with injuries to Kelly Oubre. We don't know if he'll be back this year. James Wiseman's probably done for the season. They're dealing with a myriad of injuries. It's just Steph Curry and Draymond Green out there. I don't think that's enough to beat the Lakers. So I would definitely pick the Lakers to beat the Golden State Warriors in that first game. That would send Golden State to the final playing game to play the winner of the 9-10 seed. That means between the winner of the Memphis Grizzlies and the San Antonio Spurs. In this game right here, I would have to go with the Memphis Grizzlies. Ja Morant over the last 2 to 3 weeks has been playing much better basketball, much more consistent. The Memphis Grizzlies are finally healthy. That's key. They haven't been healthy all year. They finally have Jackson back. They finally have Brandon Clark back. All right, Valanciunas is back healthy. Ja Morant is back healthy. So they've been able to sustain and still stay in the playoff picture, even with all of the myriad of injuries. I expect them to win that first game and move on to play the Golden State Warriors in the final playing game, all right, to see who gets that 8 seed spot. Golden State Warriors versus Memphis Grizzlies in that final playing game. I would definitely have to go with the Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry has been a man on a mission as it stands lately. He's taken no prisoners, especially against some of these lower tier teams in the league. He's been playing lights out. He's made it a personal goal to get that scoring title this year, to stay in the MVP race. And while doing all that, he's kept his team relevant and in the playoff hunt. So I expect the Golden State Warriors to win out and receive that 8th seed in the Western Conference playoffs, where, again, this is what I mean by, especially in the Western Conference, those particular matchups are going to really, really create some very unique playoff scenarios, especially in the first round, and it's going to have people watching. It's going to have people watching. When we look at when we look at the playoff scenario as is, all right, so, if we're looking in the Western Conference, we have that 8-seeded spot going to the Golden State Warriors. To see the Utah Jazz have to play the Golden State Warriors in the first round. That's a series that the Golden State Warriors can win. Utah struggled with Golden State all year. All right, when we look to the 7th-seeded match, where the Lakers will have to play the Phoenix Suns. We just saw Anthony Davis drop 42 points on the Phoenix Suns. All right, we see that's just not a favorable matchup for the Phoenix Suns because they struggle to trap the ball. A player like LeBron James, a player like Anthony Davis, who are so dominant, if you're not able to trap them and apply pressure, then you're not going to be able to beat them in a playoff setting. So, again, early on, we can see heavy hitters out of the Western Conference, the 1 or the 2 seed going down. Who do you guys have losing early, the Utah Jazz or the Phoenix Suns? I think the Utah Jazz, I think it's a very high probability that they could take that loss. And when we look at the Phoenix Suns playing the Lakers in the first round, LeBron James and Anthony Davis, how many other playoffs have we seen the 1 and the 2 seed go down in the first round? How crazy would that be? When we look at the Eastern Conference, matchup, that 8 seed, the 1 versus 8 matchup, we have the Washington Wizards versus the Philadelphia 76ers. Wow, we know Washington likes to turn these games into track meets. If they can turn these games into track meets, they can take Joel Embiid out of the half court. What can happen in that potential situation? Now, we've seen Washington also be a very undisciplined team this season. Are they going to be able to stay disciplined in a 7-game series to beat the 1 seed of the Eastern Conference? I don't think so, but with the way Russell Westbrook's been playing this year, anything's possible. And then when we look at the 7th seed, when we look at this 7th seed right here, we have the Brooklyn Nets versus the Boston Celtics. Now, if the Boston Celtics would have had a healthy Jaylen Brown, I would have said that this could have been more competitive. But without a healthy Jaylen Brown, I think they do not have the firepower to compete with the Brooklyn Nets, who, again, they're not a very good defensive team, but they've been playing slightly better as of late defensively. I think Brad Stevens is going to be creative enough to throw a few different looks at the Brooklyn Nets to make it hard. That's a potential series where I can see Boston still in 2 games to make that series interesting, and that's a nightmare scenario for the Brooklyn Nets. All right, going into that next round, they want to take out these teams as fast as possible. They don't want to play around with teams like Boston. They don't want to play around with any of these teams early because they've been dealing with health issues all year. The more games you have to play early, the more wear and tear you're putting on your superstars, man. Hey, man, and there we have it right there. That's the NBA play-in tournament explained, man. I want you guys to let me know, what do you think about this play-in tournament? What are your thoughts on it? Do you think it's good for basketball? I personally think that it's going to be great for basketball. I think that the league really needed to find a way to get people interested into these sports early on. All right, the playoffs started to become very dull and uninteresting early on, and we can look last year. You know, the playing game, because it didn't have the powerhouse names in it last year, it didn't garner as much attention as we're giving it right now. But now, because LeBron James has opened his mouth and made glaring statements about this particular tournament, because we can see a guy like Steph Curry, who's been on a tear to potentially get the MVP, we can see him playing in it. Because of the potential first round implications that it could create, especially in the Eastern Conference, I think you're going to have all eyes on this play-on tournament when it starts on May 18th. So make sure you guys are tuning in. We're going to cover all those games live. All of our lives, all the way into July, we're going to be holding our lives on Facebook. So make sure you are smashing the like button, hitting the notification bell, not just hitting the notification bell, following us on social media as well. That way, when we send out those notifications that we're going to be going live on Facebook, you can join as well. Now, what we're also going to be doing is, because I know a number of you guys have said that you don't have Facebook. What about us? We want to join the lives as well. That's perfectly fine. What we're going to do is we're going to be running simultaneous live streams. We're going to be streaming live on Twitch, and we're going to be streaming live on Facebook. All right. To join the live panel is all the same. Everything is run through StreamYard. So all you have to do is click the link that you see in the live chat, and you'll be able to join the live panel. So again, if you don't have Facebook, don't worry about it. You don't have to run and go open up a new Facebook account. Just go sign up for Twitch, and you can join our streams from Twitch as well. So every time we stream from here on out, we're going to be streaming on both of those platforms to give everyone multiple options to join the live streams. And man, I see you guys in the comments all the time. You got a lot of questions. Again, regardless of what the show topic is for the day, you're always welcome to come into the live panel and voice any questions you have for any community posts, basketball topics, as long as you're staying on point with your debate arguments. So if you have any questions for FYF Sports, come on, y'all. It's 2021. You know, if you're nervous, you got to shake that out your system. Hit that link, come into the live panel. I give everyone an opportunity to speak. And let's get on with the basketball debates. That's what it's about here at FYF Sports. Hey, it's been a great podcast video. Want you guys to spam it up in the comments. Let me know what you think about the NBA play-in tournament. Implications for the Western Conference are going to be huge with this play-in tournament. I think it's going to reinvigorate NBA playoff basketball, but that's just my opinion. I want to hear from you guys in the comments. Hey, but it's FYF Sports, man. It's been another great podcast video. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Follow us on all social media platforms. Hey, but it's FYF Sports. We'll be back with more sports news and media, but until then, we out.
I'm on no fixer. I'm gon' ball no picker. That I ate doors they live for. Talking on my back, go figure. Whole team eats from splitter. Never was the one to go flicker. No face, no case, no pictures. Full place, big stakes, my dinner. Flip that. Canal Street. Flip back. Last week. Old money. This week. New racks. Never buy none more. If I can't afford to gift wrap. Stunning in your foreign car. You keep riding rental tags. Heard you roll the other lean, we are not the same. Couple thousand in my pocket, this pocket chick. Rubber bands on my arm, this is not for play. I put 20 on the crib, while you cop a chain.